As we continue on our spiritual retreat of this day, I'm curious to hear if there are already some words or themes or ideas or music that particularly resonates with you, that you feel like you want to take it with you into the year. You don't have to share them now, but raise your hand if you feel like there's something that resonated for you. And if not, don't worry, we have a bunch more hours together on this spiritual retreat, but I do want to invite you to share them with each other when you're out in the hallway. I'm sorry that our Perk Heights Cafe, which was so busy on Rosh Hashanah, for some reason it's not open on Yom Kippur. Not quite sure why. We'll have to talk about that. But when you're out and about today and this evening and tomorrow, maybe share these ideas or themes or songs or rituals that resonated with you, and you can talk together about how we can live them, because that's really the main point of this whole day. What are the ideas and practices that we can live that will have a positive impact not just on ourselves and on our relationships, but on our whole society? This is not just an important topic on this day of Yom Kippur, but it's especially important as we head toward an incredibly consequential election. Regardless of the outcome, our country is so divided that it's likely there will be significant unrest of various kinds in the months and year to come, especially. So what do we do, American Jews, with the values we have? What are we going to do then? We, like the Israelites in the Torah portion that Rabbi Herman will be speaking about, we've made it this far. But in this kind of a situation, now what? There are ideas in our tradition that, in fact, many of which are the foundations of American democracy. And perhaps they can offer us some wisdom for the unknown road ahead, the uncharted territory. And perhaps we can even find inspiration for our current reality in the American society, not only from our current reality in America today, not only from our shared texts, but also from the wisdom of people like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, or today I want to think about the mid-19th century French political scientist Alexis Charles Henri Clérel, better known as Alexis de Tocqueville, who wrote the famous piece, American Democracy. And we can think about that along with contemporary sociologists and theologians of many faiths. In fact, what I'm about to advocate for today is from what I've gleaned from years of study of our ancient sacred Jewish texts and from teachings of Tibetan Buddhists, American philosophers, including the pragmatist William James, and from my favorite Quaker theologian and educator, Parker Palmer. But first, I want to suggest as a foundation for today that the world stands and our society stands on three things. Al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omed. It might sound familiar from a different version of it that we sing during the Torah service, where we say that it stands on Al HaTorah, on Torah, avodah, prayer and ritual, ve'al Gemilut chasadim, deeds of loving kindness. That is all true. But in another statement, because the rabbis have lots of different statements and arguments, it says that the world stands on three core values, al shlosha dvarim: justice, truth, and peace. And today I must say that these three values must be at the core of how we, going forward, as a community, will get through the weeks and months ahead. I emphasize the value of justice, not only because it aligns with what God demands of us, especially on this day of judgment, but because it also aligns with what we here at HSOSC seek to ensure for the citizens of our community, for the people of Baltimore. We do this through so many of our programs, including the work of our Topaz Committee, which, if you didn't know, stands for Tikkun Olam Projects, from A to Z. And yes, you can see a poster outside that will describe the many projects, and perhaps you'll feel that, especially now, you need to get more involved in one or more of them. And of course, you can come today at 12:30 for our social justice dialogue. That's justice. And then there's truth. I mean, who knows what truth is and what the facts are anymore, right? We're in an era of what some people have called truthiness. For us as Jews, this ought to concern us a great deal. A broad denial of what's true or factual, especially about minorities, leads, as we have already seen, to increasing libels about us, about Jews. That never, ever, ever bodes well for us as a community. And yes, this idea of truth is one of the midot, one of the values that we have been studying and will continue to study throughout this month of October in our religious school programs and throughout our programs. And finally, peace. Peace really is the ultimate value and goal of Judaism. And we know that all these things are interdependent, right? They're dependent on each other. There can be, without truth, there can be no justice. And without justice, there can be no peace. So if these things feel a little shaky right now, what should we do? Given the situation, and no matter who wins the election, in our state, in our country, it's imperative that we cultivate specific values and practices that I'll refer to today as habits of the heart. This was the term that French political scientist de Tocqueville first used in the 1830s to describe what shared values and practices he witnessed in America that he believed would keep American democracy strong. He wrote that democracy's future would depend heavily on generations of American citizens cultivating habits of the heart that support political wholeness. He specifically names these habits: family life, religious convictions, not just of one religion, but the fact that there are religious convictions and values of so many in this country, and participation in local politics. This ought to get us all out, getting out the vote. Our democracy depends on it. All three of these things are part of the focus of what we do here at Har Sinai Oheb Shalom. It's still so striking to me, what he said, that the human heart, this vital core of the human self, how we think and feel and live, holds the power to destroy democracy or to make it whole. He suggests that perhaps, given the kinds of pain going on in our country, that we're now living a politics of brokenheartedness instead of wholeheartedness, that there's an unraveling of our civic community on which democracy depends. If our civic community and our ability to live together unravels, then we will be threatened not only from within, but it will make us weak, and we will be more threatened from without. But despite our sharp disagreements on the nature of our American dream, many of us on the left, on the right, and in the center have at least this much in common: a shared concern about the condition of our culture, our society, the body politic. But perhaps this shared concern, this heartbreak even, can build for us a footbridge, a way of mutual understanding on which we can walk toward each other. On this day of forgiveness and hope, I ask that we consider just a couple of these habits of the heart through our decidedly Reform Jewish lenses, and imagine how we might live them more intentionally, especially in the weeks and months ahead. As the Jewish experience throughout history has shown us over and over again, this brokenheartedness, this concern, this broken open heart is also a source of power as well as compassion. It has the power to bring down whatever diminishes us and raise up whatever serves us well. So we can deploy our power, our concern, together with many other communities by doing what every great social movement and what every great Jewish community has done in similar situations. We have done this in so many different countries throughout history. Put time, your skill, your energy into the education and mobilization of the powers of the heart. As history consistently demonstrates, that kind of heart talk, that kind of behavior can yield actions just as practical as those driven by conventional forms of power. The first habit I want to suggest to us is based on a midrash. It's a parable. There was the stories of passengers on a boat. As the boat pulled away from the dock to begin its voyage, one passenger opened his bag and took out a drill. The other passengers became alarmed, especially as he put the drill bit against the floor under his seat and began to make a hole. He was making a hole in the bottom of the boat. The other passengers, in fear and astonishment, pleaded with him, "Stop, what are you doing?" The man was surprised by their objections. He calmly said, "What business is it of yours? Why should you care? I'm only drilling under my own seat. I have no intention of drilling under yours. I'm just drilling under my own seat." The other passengers frantically told him, "The seat might only be yours, but the water will rise up to drown us all." And so together, they got him to stop. First of all, I love how this story shows that the problem of our hyper-individualism existed in the ancient world just like it does in our own. And what I love about this story is that it does so in a semi-humorous but stark way teach that we are all, literally and figuratively, in the same boat. That idea is the foundation of Jewish life and our sense of mutual responsibility both for other Jews around the world and for the larger community. We're all in this together. And the second habit of the heart that Judaism teaches so well, actually it's really two. One is the idea of hospitality, of hachnasat orchim, the idea that we want to welcome into our space people with ideas that are different from ours. We want to welcome into our space all kinds of viewpoints and even religious backgrounds and political leanings. It's why we want our speakers series to have a wide variety of voices. We want to welcome people in because not only is hospitality such a good human value, but the practice of deep hospitality can embrace more creative possibilities that are inherent in our differences. But if we can talk together, perhaps we will come up with better ideas than we can alone. Perhaps we really can work together in more ways than we might think. This is based on the Jewish idea of pluralism, the idea that There are many, many, many different voices in our texts. There isn't just one vision of God. There isn't just one view of what kind of perfect era we're all striving for. There isn't one view of being Jewish, which we get to see, especially on this day in this neighborhood. The Talmud itself celebrates many views. In fact, there's this great story in the Talmud about, of course, the famous Hillel and Shammai, who were fighting all the time with each other, and they're constantly disagreeing, and they feel like they have to always know who's right, and they ask God to show them who's right. And God says, through a voice, a bat kol, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. These and those, you and you, are right, because they're all the words of the living God. And of course, those rabbis at that point should have just packed up their swords and gone home. But they didn't. They realized that they had to figure it out together. We're in this together. These multiple perspectives, they will make us stronger. We know, in fact, that even talking with the people that you most disagree with, the rabbis show us in the Talmud that even in a moment of destruction, the thing that saved the Jewish people was somebody willing to talk to the person that he despised even, to say, what can we do now? What do we need to do now? Because the boat might be sinking. Let's figure out together how to allow all people to have all boats rise and not sink. I believe that if we can live some of these practices together, the practice of taking care of each other and hearing each other's multiple views, then we will be able to do what Palmer says, that Unitarian says, is the most important thing for us to do right now. If he were to choose two words, he chooses the following. Chutzpah. I love that it's a Unitarian theological principle. Don't you? Chutzpah. By chutzpah, he says, I mean knowing that I have a voice that needs to be heard and I have the right to speak it. Of course, the Quakers seem to be able to be quiet and listen to just one voice at a time. We Jews seem to have more difficulty with that. But the chutzpah of knowing that your voice must be heard, you must speak. You must ask every person you encounter in the next few days, are you registered to vote? Where are you going to vote? When are you going to vote? Use your voice. Be chutzpahdik with every single person you see in the next few days, because whether our boat rises or sinks, our democracy depends on everyone voting. And then he says the second word, which is also something we're sometimes challenged by: humility. By humility, he says, it means accepting the fact that my truth, any single truth, is always partial. In fact, it may not be totally true either. We need to listen with openness and respect, especially to the other, because no single voice, no single person, according to the best of our monotheistic traditions, no single voice, no single religion even, has the whole truth. So humility about the fact that we need others to know more truth, and chutzpah, so that we all can make sure that every citizen is engaged in preserving our future. So on this Yom Kippur, let us recommit to what we can do in the year ahead. In living this way with habits of the heart, we can protect the most vulnerable. Together we can ensure that our society is one in which every person is equal, is protected, where every person can be safe, and that ours will be a society in which we can all live together in peace. Ken yehi ratzon. May it be so.